Yeah, as long as we both see it. All right. Welcome, everybody, to episode 39 of Chewing the Cud. This is a weekly live stream where we sit down at the kitchen table and discuss things related and unrelated to regenerative agriculture. Usually the way these things work is we start off with some brief introductions, and then we'll get into our topic for the week. And the topic for the week this week is really just sort of a meet and greet with us. I know there's a bunch of new people on, as far as following on social media and whatnot. And we do a little bit of brief introductions at the beginning of these live streams. And so I just sort of wanted to get into depth with that, and then also introduce Connor, who's finally here. I know people have been asking about when he's going to be here, and he's finally here in the flesh. And he's not replacing Isaac. Don't get that confused. Isaac's coming back, and then we'll have to try to cram 3 people into the frame, but we'll see how that works. So I'll just run through a quick introduction, and then after a little chat back and forth, then we'll open it up to questions, comments, concerns. Ask us anything. We'll answer it. It doesn't have to be related to regenerative agriculture at all. Questions about our backgrounds, about Connor, about anything. So that's the part that we really enjoy, is the interaction. So as far as introductions, I know this is usually Isaac's job, but I'll give it my best shot. Isaac, if you're out there, you can critique me. I'm Ben Hawley, and this is Connor Helton, right? Helton. Yeah. And we're interns here at Green Pastures Farm. Isaac is the third member of the party here, and we're interning for Greg Judy, and we're here to learn everything that he has to offer. We graze about 350 head of South Pole cattle. We do some parasite-resistant hair sheep. We sell livestock guardian dogs. There's some shiitake mushrooms, bale and rollers, fence posts, consulting, farm tours, grazing schools, on and on and on. It's pretty busy here on the farm. So, and we're just here. Isaac and I are on year 2. Connor's about starting year 1. And we're excited for this next chapter, and just an epic crew we got here. So, stoked to learn and share a little bit of it with you guys, and sort of, learn along the way, which is what we really enjoy. So anyway, how about we just go into a little discussion about how did you find out about Greg? What was because Isaac and I have a similar me and Isaac is similar, but how did you find out about Greg in the first place?
I found out through YouTube. So I was just kind of looking at regenerative agriculture, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because I was living on a farm and was looking more into it and trying to learn more. And his channel came up. Actually, I saw the one with. It was Justin Rhodes was talking to him. Yeah. And then I kind of from there got to his channel and started looking at his stuff. Videos, so.
Yeah, it was the same thing with me and Isaac. It was we saw we both watched the Great American Farm Tour, parts of it, and the one with Greg, it was we were like, oh, this guy's kind of interesting. You know what I mean? He's saying stuff that makes sense and whatever. And I didn't really watch a lot of Greg as far as YouTube was concerned. I just went right from there to seeing if he had an internship or if that was something that was doable. And this was back in the day before he had his current website, and you had to go. You couldn't even get to the page with the intern information on it. You had to Google it and go through a different back door to get there. And then there was information oh yeah, you can stay on the farm for a year or 6 months. At that point, it was either or. Now it's just a year. And you could. And it's yeah, you could grow a little garden. We'll give you a little stipend, give you meat, milk, and eggs. You get to learn. I was it sounds like a pretty good gig, but I didn't think I was gonna do it. I just chalked it up I'll put it on the back burner when I graduate from college. If it's still interesting, maybe I'll give it a shot. And then it was very interesting. Long story short, but we can get into that. But so you were before doing this, you were as far as your introduction to agriculture is concerned, you were in Oregon, right?
Yeah, so I went out there, and then I worked for a church for a year, doing collegiate ministry stuff. Mm-hmm. And then as I was finishing that up, I got an offer. Some of the friends I had made out there, they had gotten a really big school grant, it's a farm to school grant is what it was called, and so it was the state of Oregon funding farming programs essentially
in like 4 schools.
Yeah,
that's pretty
and
cool.
so they needed extra hands to help, and I was like, sure, like I mean the Oregon summer is amazing, so I was like, yeah, I'd love to stay another summer and do that.
So you were out there you were already there in the first place. But you weren't planning on doing the ag thing in the beginning. It was just happened to be.
Yeah, I met them while I was there, and then as I was like getting ready to leave, they were like, "Hey, we have this opportunity. Would you want to come out and work for the summer?" And I was like, "Sure, why not? Like I get to live there for free and like work on the farm and enjoy another summer."
Yeah.
And so
that was just complete chance. That's wild. And so that's what took you here.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Think about like if you had, because you're originally from
Tennessee,
from Nashville. So imagine if you had just gone home, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't be here, you know?
Oh, yeah,
that's so crazy to think about. Yeah, that's wild. Like, yeah, I don't know. For me it was like I had no idea in college what I wanted to do, like after I graduated at all, and I mean I knew I loved like outdoors, and I've always loved being outside backpacking. I'm like a huge plant geek and bird geek, and like I just like love learning about that kind of stuff, and so I knew I wanted to do something in that vein. So I was like, all right, I'll study environmental science because it's a pretty broad spectrum thing, and along the way, independently, I think I read one of Joel Salatin's books is what like introduced me to regenerative agriculture in the first place. And I think it was You Can Farm. And I read that book and was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Like it sounds interesting. Because I'd worked on farms in high school, but it was sort of like vegetables, not a lot of livestock. And I mean, like thinning carrots can only be so fun, you know what I mean? And so
stooping over.
Yeah, and it was just kind of monotonous, but I enjoyed it because it was, you know, I got to be outside and working with your hands, and it's like way better than some other random summer job. So I enjoyed that part of it, and like the rewarding aspect of working on the farm. But I didn't think that was going to be a career by any means, and so I read that book in college, or in college, and then sort of started learning a little bit more about it on my own, and then started realizing the potential impact that it could have in relation to the things that I was learning in school from an environmental standpoint, about, you know, repairing ecosystems and like being able to feed people while helping sequester carbon at the same time, that whole deal. And then I really started to get amped about it. I was like, man, this is pretty cool. And that Greg Judy thing in the back of my mind was like, this is becoming more of a reality. This might be my way into the industry, you know? And so then after I graduated, I applied because I didn't have anything else. I didn't have anything else planned. I was like, I'm going to give this a shot. I'll regret it if I don't. And I did, and you know the process. It's not like you just show up and you're here, you know.
You're hired.
Yeah, no, it's a deal. I mean, and you're gonna get into it too, because when we get all the applications, and then we'll read them. Isaac, you and me will read them, and Greg and Jan will read them. We all do it independently, and then we come together and discuss, and it's a pretty good process from seeing it on the back end. So, yeah. But anyway, that's crazy though. That you just by chance were out there and then decided that you were gonna stay for the farming thing. But did you have any interest in ag before then at all, or was it something even on your radar, or was it purely just like, oh, this is a cool opportunity?
Not really. Like, yeah, I was just like, oh, this seems fun. I like these people. I'd love to go help and do that. I think like my dad he's always had horses.
Yeah.
My granddad's always raised goats. And he used to do cattle as well. And so like I kind of was exposed to it. But as a kid, I was just like, I just like playing, you know, with the baby animals, like the baby goats and stuff like that. It was just like they were cute and fun. Yeah. But it wasn't really like I could see this being you know, what I want to do with my life.
But so because it was like that, right, where it was just sort of this serendipitous thing, like when did that shift happen where you were like, oh, I actually really enjoy this, and this is something that I kind of want to pursue? Like when did that shift happen? You know?
So I mean that was that summer. So like I majored in kinesiology in college. And
I remember you said that.
I've always been into health and fitness and stuff like that. And so I thought I wanted to be a physical therapist. I was like, nah. Like after I shadowed, I was like, I can't do that. And then I tried a bunch of different things. I did strength and conditioning. That was probably the most fun thing that I did. With it. But it just wasn't clicking with me, and like I just wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And then I spent that summer on the farm. We were growing our own food. We were raising pigs. We were raising like egg-laying chickens.
That's awesome.
And like all that stuff. And I was getting grass-fed beef. And it was just like, wait a second.
Yeah.
You can live this way, and you can take care of yourself and like grow your own food, and it's so much better, so much healthier, and just seeing that process. But then and they were doing that on their like small farm, like at home. Yeah. But then we were also like building a 2-acre agricultural farm for the school
at the same time
for educational purposes. Okay. And so I got to see both of those aspects, and like, and I love working with my hands. I love being outside. Yeah. I love like being able to grow my own food, and it was just, to me, I didn't get a whole lot of fresh out of the garden vegetables and stuff like that. And I'm like, this is so totally much better. Thing. Like it's like I don't like these vegetables if I get them from the store, but I can just eat them straight out of the garden here. Yeah. And so for me, I was seeing that, and I was like, this is the kind of life that I want to live. You know, like this is the kind of thing that I want to do. And then just realizing that, okay, there are other people who are actually doing this and like making a living and like making it a career. Yeah. And so it was probably about end of July. Like I went there in June, and then I stayed until like mid-September, no, like end of September. Like beginning of September.
So like the growing season sort of,
And so like at the end of July, I was like doing a lot of like YouTube research, like all that stuff.
You were convinced that it was going to be a thing.
Yeah, and I found out that they had the internship here, and I was like, what the heck? I'll give it a shot. I'll apply. Not expecting to hear anything back. And then when I did, I was like, oh, okay, like this could actually happen. So,
were you because you were raising livestock a little bit, like with the pigs and the chicken stuff, but you were doing a lot of vegetables. So was there something about like the cattle situation where you're like, that's something I really want to learn, or was it more just Greg as a human that you were like drawn to that made you want to do it, or you know what I mean? Like
I think I liked dealing with the pigs and the chickens more than I liked the vegetable stuff. Like, it was super interesting. I loved learning about it. Yeah, but I was like, long term, I want to take care of animals, you know? And so, but then also, you know, Greg he just makes sense. Like, it's like, you hear all this information that's like, oh, this is bad for the land, this is bad for this is bad for that. And I'm just like, it doesn't correlate, but then he talks about it, and it's just like, that makes sense. Yep. I can jive with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So. Yeah, that's cool though, man. Yeah, I mean, it's just funny to like think about the things that happen that sort of bounce you around, and then you end up heading in a particular direction. You know what I mean? It's wild. And so you had talked to us a little bit about this in your visit, but like, do you have like any inkling as far as like what you want to do? I mean, you just got here, but like what you want to do like with this like knowledge base that you're gonna get, you know what I mean? I had such a primitive idea in the beginning of what I wanted to do with it. Right. And that evolved like seriously over time. But at this point, do you have like any inkling of like what you think you want to do with it, or anything at all? You know what I mean?
I kind of like, there's this like, because I'm a big vision kind of guy. So give me the big vision. Let's hear it. So what I'd like to do, my great grandparents have a farm, or they own like quite a bit of acreage in Tennessee. Yeah. And so, and my great grandmother is actually still alive. And,
that's cool.
I'd love to eventually go back there and do this there.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, one, just to keep that in the family.
Yeah.
And keep that alive. But I'd love to do that. And, like, because I want to, whatever I do, I want to help people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, kind of like big goal, big vision would be to do this and kind of have like an intern program, but more for, like homeless or at-risk kids or something like that.
Like giving them exposure to like what that is. You know?
Giving them like, because I mean, growing up in a city or growing up in the suburbs, you have no concept of where this meat came from, where this food comes from.
Yeah.
And like being able to give people that experience.
Yeah, that's super cool. That's like a totally different. It's just funny to think about. Like Isaac and I have talked at length at this point, obviously, about like sort of what the direction we want to head in. You know what I mean? And it's kind of cool because the three of us are all like we're all super stoked about it in the same way, but also like looking at like slightly different paths. You know what I mean? Like after this, it's not like we're all thinking like, oh yeah, gonna go and raise some cows and some sheep or whatever and sell them for seed stock and like that'll be that. You know what I mean? It's like Isaac. I mean, I'm speaking for Isaac, and Isaac, if you're on here, just start correcting me if I'm wrong. But as far as I can gather from what Isaac's thinking about is like big vision, obviously long term. He'd like to start something close to home in that similar sort of community that he grew up in and be able to like supply people in his circle with good quality meat and food in general. And so he's super interested in like nesting enterprises with sheep and cattle and incorporating pigs because his family's done that for years and years and that kind of a deal. And then you with your like helping out a huge group of people and bringing them onto the land and that type of a deal. And then I'm interested in this as like big picture is this is like a permanent fixture in the food system, and so how do you get there, and in the way that I can see it is I think there's always going to be a place for small to medium scale like agriculture, because local food should always have a place in society. But if you really want it to like uproot a big portion of the infrastructure, the way that we feed ourselves, you're going to have to figure out how to do it at some sort of scale to feed millions and millions of people. And so what does that look like? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
I think that gets me super interested in as far as like next steps, trying to sort of see what this thing looks like a little bit bigger, whatever that means, Yeah. So anyway, if anyone's got any questions or comments for us about how we heard about Greg or where our backgrounds or where we grew up or like anything like that or anything related to anything, you can just start throwing it in the chat and we'll start looking at these. Let's see. We'll go from the top. Lots of people. Yep, doing it on Easter. Absolutely. Adding single strand high tensile wire, using timeless T-posts. What do you use for corner posts? Size, brand, and where to buy them. So we'll just jump into this, and if you have any questions, no, seriously, if you have any questions about what I'm saying, like throw it out there because I might miss something. But so as far as corners, depends on how many wires you're pulling. Single strand. So for a single strand, all you're gonna need is what we recommend as far as the easiest and as far as labor wise post to use and probably the most durable long term is to use solid fiberglass. Whether that's sucker rods or otherwise, we sell them. But there's some people are sort of like scrounging them up in certain areas and making fiberglass posts. But like, for a single strand, you probably could get away with a 5.5 foot, fiberglass rod, but like a 6 footer would definitely be totally satisfactory. And those are about, I think they're an inch and a quarter, maybe. I think they're 1.25 inches diameter. And we use those for corners. So timeless posts, for people who don't know, they're pre-drilled and they're really good for straights. And so, but you can't go around bends with them. And so if you're making any sort of bend in your fence, going around a corner, going around a pond, something like that, you're going to need to put a corner. And the options are fiberglass corners, or you can use wood. We always try to steer people away from using steel, even though you can use steel with an insulator, just because if a deer runs into the fence or the insulator snaps or something like that, you have an immediate ground rod right there, versus wood is not that conductive, so you still need an insulator on a wood post, but it's not going to just short your fence out completely if something happens. So fiberglass is best, and then wood would be second best, but it's also a pain in the butt because you gotta dig a big hole to put the corner in. And Osage orange or hedge or bodark, if you're from Texas or whatever, that tree specifically is probably the best species of wood to use for corners, just because it lasts like 100 years. It's just so dense and so hard. Mulberry is another good species. Black locust is pretty good. Cedar is fine. The only problem with cedar is that the cambium bark, or in the cambium, like the softwood essentially around the cedar, will decay, and you'll just be left with the core, and then the post will be loose in the hole. So you can use PVC, but it's not as durable as fiberglass is. But yeah, so fiberglass and wood are like our two recommendations. But anyway, and you can buy them here or try to find somebody. I mean, Thomas does sell some corners. The only thing though is that they're just expensive in comparison to fiberglass. Funny, so many people get hooked on Greg from Justin. It was the other way around for me. That's funny. Let's see. I found Greg, first two from Alan Savory, talk with Ray Archuleta, Gabe Brown, and I saw Greg Judy on a conference talk. That's cool. Yeah, he's been doing a couple conferences recently just with the COVID thing. It's, he hasn't been doing a ton of them. What does that one say? Grew up eating veggies out of the garden. 2, took a while to understand how most folks don't like veggies until I had a commercial who canned vegetables. Yeah, that's true. You want to just keep scrolling through them? Yeah. You can read them. I don't necessarily need to see them. Okay. If you want to just hold them. Here's a question for Connor. Just read them out loud because people won't be able to see them after the fact.
Connor, do you think you would bring your family into regenerative practices with their horses and cattle? Would they be receptive? I mean,
that's a good question.
Yeah, I think if I the thing is with my family, I would have to present it in like a, this is why we do this, this is how we do this, and really explain why it would be good. Mm-hmm. But I totally think if I went in with the knowledge that I'm gonna gain here, mm-hmm. and use that, they would totally be receptive to that. Yeah. And totally be willing.
That'd be super cool.
Like I've talked with my uncle and with my grandparents already, and they're like, yeah, we'd love for you to go out there and like do that. And so
that's awesome.
Yeah, I think they're already receptive and already willing to
try some stuff out.
To try different stuff, yeah.
Yeah, because there's some people, like one of the big things that like we've run into with people that like we know or we've talked to through Greg or through our own like social media stuff or whatever, is there's a lot of people where like the younger generation like really wants to try to implement some of this regenerative, like, managed grazing kind of stuff, and it's always hard when there's somebody doing something. I mean, it's not the same because it's not like your family's doing production, livestock, but it's even more accentuated in like a production system where the dad or the grandfather or whatever has done it this way for so mm-hmm. long, and then the younger generation's like, can we try doing it this way? Like, can we try dividing it up, or just like dividing up a paddock and see what happens? And there's just like a lot of friction there. Yeah. But I know it's a different situation for you because you're not raising like whatever, right? Like beef it's cattle like for your living. Like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's still a thing. Like if someone's been doing something for so long a certain way, like it takes a special kind of person to be receptive to something different. But that's super cool. Yeah.
I think there was a question earlier. Someone was asking if I like the grub. Yeah, he's a really good cook, so it's really good.
I try. Try to go live on YouTube next time. Yes, I understand, Finn. That's my brother. So anyway, let me just address that for a second. I'm in the works. I think I'm in the works with a plan to try to get this live on YouTube simultaneously. I'm gonna attempt to do that next week. My only fear is just that the quality of this stream is gonna decrease if I try to do both at the same time. But we're gonna give it I'm gonna run some tests and we'll see if it's a thing, because I'd love to bring the YouTube community onto this as well. It's just like more people, more contribution, more conversations. It just helps everybody out. So I'm gonna try to do that.
Anyone been to Polyface?
I haven't been to Polyface. But people who, for those who don't know, Polyface is Joel Salatin's place in Virginia. Greg's been a couple times. He's actually going in the fall for the Stockman Grass Farmer Conference. I think that's being held at Joel's place. He's going to speak, so he'll be gone. I think it's September for, I want to say like 9 days or something like that. So, okay. But yeah, I think he's gonna go to that. But I know Isaac was thinking about interning at Polyface. Before, it was either this or going there, or maybe going there afterwards. I don't think he's thinking about doing that anymore for a variety of reasons. But anyway, he's read a lot of Joel Salatin stuff, and he knows a lot about it. So
he's got a lot of books.
He'd be a good person to. He knows more about it, even though I don't think he's been there specifically. But long story long, neither of us have been to Polyface. This guy right here, girl, is from Uruguay.
Oh wow,
it's pretty cool. I'm pretty sure it's Uruguay. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. Is that the bottom of it?
Yeah, that's the bottom. Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions, comments, concerns? You're visiting April 17th. April 17th. That's soon. That's cool.
Are you talking about? Are you visiting here?
Here or probably
Polyface?
Yeah, I think that was who talked about that. Yeah.
That was his question.
Yeah. That's cool. What about? Let's see.
Connor, do you have much experience with electric fencing? Basically, have you been zapped yet?
Have you been shocked yet?
I not since I got here this past week.
Yeah.
I got a little bit of shock when I was on my visit. I was touching the metal on the reel when I hooked it on, and it got me a little bit. It wasn't too bad. But we put up at my dad's place. We put up electric fencing for our horses, and me and my brother used to mess around and grab it because it wasn't bad for you in most places, but there were a couple spots where you just get lit up.
Oh man!
So I've been shocked a few times.
You get rocked by one of these chargers. It is a totally different deal. But yeah, you'll get it one of these days. You'll get it. We'll have to have a detailed story session of Connor's first really bad shock. It's so funny. There's nothing funnier than electric fence stories. Oh my god. Greg's got some good ones that I can't do justice to. I've been shocked a couple times pretty good. Probably 2 or 3 times very memorably. What's my worst one? Probably. So if you can imagine this for a second, there's a sheep height double strand hot wire fence right over where we had the rams in their sort of bachelor pad for the wintertime. And then offset from that is a crappy barbed wire fence that's tall. It's probably the top rung's probably somewhere around 4.5 feet. It's way too tall to jump over or whatever. So I was taking a water tank, a mobile water tank, and I was lifting it and putting it over the other side of the barbed wire fence. And I was trying not to touch the hot wire, so I was lifting the tank up, and I had one foot on one side of one foot on inside the paddock. I was straddling the hot fence. And I must have touched, I don't know what happened because it was just so dramatic and like instantaneous that there wasn't just like a location where it shocked me. It just felt it in my whole body. But I must have touched the barbed wire with like my knee and the electric fence with like my calf. And I swear to God, it felt like somebody threw like a medicine ball in my chest. It was terrible. I like threw the tank down and I stood there for a second like, oh, I think I'm okay. Man, it's brutal. I've had another bad one just on your knees. Anytime you're on your knees and you touch the electric fence, that's always a bad deal because you're so much more grounded opposed to standing in your rubber boots. But yeah, I've also done that thing with the reel, like, you know, with a little bad shock, but I've also not realized where the wire was and it was running right down the inside of the handle and just grabbed a whole fistful of wire. And that wasn't too bad. It was just really startling because I was not expecting on an insulated handle for me to just get my absolute socks blown off. But what else we got?
Let's see. There was a
up a little farther. There. Okay. There we go. Let's see. Last year I grazed the wire when I grabbed the plastic handle. Meanwhile, my other hand was on a metal gate. Oh my God.
Oh no.
That's almost like a light bulb element right there. You probably were glowing. We're glowing. That's terrible.
Hair standing up.
If you have a small herd of cattle, say 20, how would you divide up a round bale in different paddocks, assuming one round bale would be more than enough for 20 head for one day? Okay, this is a good question. We can do this math out for you right here, and we can figure out exactly how much hay your animals are going to need. But then we can also answer the second piece of that question, which is relatively simple. But so the rule of thumb is that an animal needs, and we're talking about cattle, needs 3% of its body weight in feed every day in order to just maintain condition. So that's the bare minimum that they need to have. So if it's a 1,000-pound animal, 3% of its body weight, I'm going to be relying heavily on you for mental math because I'm terrible, is what, 30 pounds? 30 pounds of hay. So like a 1,000-pound animal needs 30 pounds of hay a day, right? So then all you need to do then is just know how much weight is in your bales. So if it's a 1,200-pound round bale, which is like we have 5x5s, and you assume that about 20% of that's going to be wasted if you unroll it. So it's a 1,000-pound bale, right? That means that, so a 1,000-pound cow needs 30 pounds of hay, and then you just multiply that up, to the amount of animals that you've got. And if you've got 30 head, right, that's going to be 900 pounds, which is roughly a bale. Yeah. So your 30 head in one day need one bale to maintain. So, but if you only have 20 head, say they're 1,000-pound average weight. If you only have 20 head, 1,000-pound average weight, that's 2,000 pounds. 3% of 2,000 is, 3% of 1,000 is 30, so 3% of 2,000 is
20,000 pounds.
20,000 pounds, yeah. So 3% of 20,000 is 600, I think.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, because think about it, like 3% of 1,000 is 30. Yeah. 3% of 10,000 it'd be 300. And then double that, it would be 600. Yeah, 600. We're rocking and rolling here. There we go.
We excelled in math class.
Yeah, my brother's just going like this right now. But okay, so you need about 600 pounds, which is about half of a bale for your 20 head a day, which means you don't need to unroll a whole bale. So what we do with our bale unroller is we'll unroll about 50%, and then we're able to jack the bale up. And so they only get the 50%, drive your bale on the bale and roller off to wherever you want to drop your bale and roller, unhook it from your four-wheeler or your side-by-side, go home, come back the next day, unroll the other half. The other option that you can do, and this is only if it's it's going to be dry, is as in like no rain or snow or anything, is you could unroll the whole bale and then just divide the paddock right down the middle of the amount that you unrolled. And so they only get access to half, and then the next day they get access to the other half. That saves a lot of time because you just unroll the whole thing, and the next day you just have to unroll a wire. It's almost like a form of bale grazing. I hope that helps. I think that about answers it. Yeah. So you probably need, if you have a 1,200-pound bales, you probably need about a half a bale for those those 20 head minimum. So like if you want to give them a little more than half,
right,
it probably wouldn't be a bad idea.
That would be just to maintain.
That'd be just to maintain. And the way that Greg sort of figures it for his head, if you calculate it out for the winter, like he basically wants about 1 bale per animal for the duration of, for as like minimum amount of hay he wants to keep in stock for the winter. So like if we have 375 head, we need 375 bales minimum. Because over the winter, roughly each animal will eat about a bale. Because when we just say head, that 375 is like everything from tiny little calves that are about 200 pounds to like 1,100, 1,200 pound cows that are like the biggest ones that Greg has, and everything in between. So you really want to do it by, like if you really want to get specific, you got to get animal units and then just go off of that. So if there's, and animal units are based on 1,000 pounds, like, so 1,000 pound animal. So like 1,000 pound cow is 1 animal unit. 1,200 pound cow is 1.2 animal units. And so you can just figure that out, how many animal units you've got in your herd, and then do the 3% calculation and go from there. So I hope that helps some people. But what else we got? Anything mathing? That's hysterical. Yeah.
That was the last thing.
Cool. Yeah, we're gonna do a whole chewing the cud episode on winter management and how to do calculations for how much feed you're gonna need, things to think about as far as frost-free water tanks and how to deal with that. There's a lot of sort of bits and pieces that come with the winter that are just very unique in comparison to the rest of the year. And obviously it varies, right? Like if you're in Tennessee, your winters are going to be more mild than they are here. And if you're in Michigan, they're good. Like these winters are more mild than up there, you know? So like, it just, like everything that we talk about, there's always a huge asterisk, which is depending on your current situation. So nothing that we ever say is a blanket statement, almost nothing. There's certain like key principles that are pretty universal, but it's always context dependent. I get comments on YouTube all the time about like, you know, this wouldn't work for that reason, or I've got this many animals, like how much fencing am I going to need for them with this many acres? And it's like, it depends on, it always depends, you know? So anyway.
Connor, what do you think of the puppies? They are fantastic. I love dogs, so I can't get enough of them.
We've got a lot of them.
Yeah. It's funny. So they're a lot. That's for sure. You walk into the sheep paddock and they're just puppies everywhere.
Puppy avalanche.
They all want to be petted. And they're all just like coming up to you. So they're pretty great. They're cute. They're pretty awesome. Yeah, they are. I definitely, if you're gonna raise livestock guardian dogs for production, do like 4 to 8 maximum. But they are so awesome to deal with. That's the saving grace. Is like they require a lot of our attention to make sure that stuff is going okay, but stuff is going right, I should say. But they're just so much fun to deal with that it's almost worth it. Yeah. The thing I was, like the fact. I mean, they're livestock guardian dogs.
Yeah.
And I was surprised by how like gentle and like docile most of them are. Most of them are just like really chill. Mm-hmm. And like you'd think they'd be a little bit more aggressive or more in your face. But
they're really just, it's really just a front. You know what I mean? Like their number one job is to just bark their head off at everything that they can smell. And they do a really good job at that. But you're right. It's not like they're attack dogs or they're like going after stuff, you know? But if something did come into the sheep though, that they didn't want there, like they would chase it off or try to get it, you know? Right. It's sort of a game though, but there's zero aggression towards people, which is always a good thing. You just don't want that, you know? Mm-hmm. Like how are you you want to sell the dog in our case, or you need to, if it's your dog and you're not selling it, if you need to handle him or her to put frontline on them or to give them some sort of medication, or if they get injured to bring them into the vet or something like that, if they're just so aggressive and skittish and like hard to handle that you got to like tranquilize them in order to get them in there. It's just a nightmare. It's just you can have a great dog that loves people as long as they know that their place is in there with the sheep and that's their job. And we make that distinction really clear when we leave the paddock. Like, we give them all kinds of pets that they want when we're in there, but at the end of the day, when it's time to leave, it's time to leave, and we'll make sure that nobody follows us back. And we're super, super adamant about that. And the dogs seem to be like receptive and respecting of that. So far, at least, we haven't had any huge issues with that.
Let's see, any calves dropping there yet?
You want to break the news?
So we had the second calf of the year.
Well, sort of
the first calf of the season come this afternoon. So he was
born a couple hours ago.
Yeah, we were eating Easter like lunch.
Yep.
And then Jan and
her sister went to go move the mob, because the mob is right behind the house right now, which is pretty cool.
And then
they found him.
Calf.
Yeah, little bull calf. Looks really good. So, one down. No problems yet. But yeah, that's always exciting. They're just going to start flying out left and right.
Yeah. Do you offer any different types of mineral to the rams?
No, not to the rams specifically. I mean, the rams are in with the sheep the vast majority of the year. The sheep are on free choice right now. People who are following what we've been doing know that we're in the process of trialing a different mineral system, but the sheep are just still on straight up free choice. And Greg did that for the first time last year. Before that, they were literally just getting salt and maybe a pre-mixed mineral every once in a while. But sheep aren't as needy, at least Greg's sheep. The breed itself and the genetics that he has they're bred for minimum maintenance. Like, they're bred to be as low maintenance and self-sufficient as possible. And so they don't really need a lot of mineral, because they're eating a lot of broadleaves and sort of forage that is highly mineralized in general. That's bringing up all sorts of different stuff from the soil and plant metabolites and that kind of thing. And so they get a lot more from their forage than the cattle do as far as minerals are concerned. And so they don't need it as much. So what we would recommend for people just starting out, especially if you're on a budget with sheep, is just make sure you get the right stuff, and then just start with salt. Like, they'll do totally fine on salt. We did notice that giving them the free choice, that last year we averaged the best highest lambs per ewe of any year that Greg's ever had. And that might just be a combination of factors, but the mineral probably isn't hurting. The fact that those ewes are getting everything they need nutritionally, for their gestation and whatnot, means we got a lot of twins this year, which is a good thing for sheep. Not so much for cattle, but a good thing with sheep. So yeah, the sheep get free choice. They might end up switching to a similar program that we're trying out with the cattle right now, but stay tuned for that. That's probably going to be after our time here, I would guess, if the sheep are going to get switched, because we got a lot of free choice we need to feed up if we do make the switch. We're still in the process of seeing how they do. This calving season is going to be telling as far as if we're getting the kind of mineralization in those animals that we want. And seeing the positive impacts of that program. But yeah, stay tuned for that. So let's see.
Any other frog species on the farm besides spring peepers?
Can you hear the peepers? Is that why people are commenting on that? Because I can hear some of them.
Yeah.
There's your classic, green, bullfrogs and green frogs and leopard frogs there's also a lot of gray tree frogs, which I think are super cool. We don't see a lot of them in Massachusetts, so we get them occasionally, but I was super pumped when I was here and started seeing gray tree frogs, because they're just cool little critters. But yeah, I'm not a huge frog expert, but we definitely have a good amount of frogs. There's so many ponds here that it's just frog heaven.
Habitat.
There's a lot of habitat for frogs.
What kinds of puppy behavior are you having to
regularly
correct, and how do you maintain that not being there all the time?
So there's really not a lot that we need to write. So okay, let's put it this way: the most important behavior that you need to correct, other than making sure they don't follow you back to the truck, is to prevent them from chasing ewes or like chasing sheep in general. And that's difficult to correct because you're in there such an infrequent amount of time that if it does happen when you're there, you sort of get lucky. But if it's happening the vast majority of the time, you're not there, so you can't really correct it. What you would hope is those times that you are there and you do see it and you do correct it, you correct it aggressively enough that you never want to hit the dog, but you just freak him out we have this sort of trash bag on the end of a stick, and we smack it on the ground, and it really freaks the dogs out. And so they're really perceptive. If you yell in a really strong, aggressive voice and you're smacking that trash bag on the ground, if they're trying to chase something or whatever, they get the message really quick, and they sort of like freak out and whatever. So if you can do that and sort of drill it in them often enough when you're in there, maybe if you start to notice that, you make a point of spending some more time with the sheep, just sitting out with them for an hour or two during the day and just watching the dogs and sort of seeing how they interact with the sheep and correcting any bad behavior. The problem that we're running into is just we have so many dogs that there's this pack mentality that takes over where the individual dogs are really good dogs and they don't really want to chase sheep. But what'll happen is one will sort of get excited and start to like maybe like walk towards the sheep, and then the other ones start to like walk up towards it, and then the ewe starts running, and then all the dogs start running after it. And so that's why we've had to take a bunch of the older dogs and put them in electronetting runs, where they're staying for the majority of the time, and then we'll cycle them into the sheep so they keep getting exposure, but they're in there in smaller amounts, like one older dog with a bunch of puppies in there at the same time. And that seems to be eliminating the sheep chasing situation, because we found some rams that were out running around on the blacktop because some of those dogs chased them out. So that's like the biggest pain that we've had to deal with. But it's one of those things where it's hard to correct. You're right, if you're not there all the time. So you just got to spend more time with them if you start to notice that type of a deal. And at the end of the day, if there's some dogs that just are good-natured and they're not going to really be chasing sheep very much at all, and those are the ones that make really good guard dogs. So if you've got one that starts chasing sheep, sometimes they're just have that whatever that is, that chase switch in their head so ingrained that they're just never going to make a good guard dog, and that's someone that you just have to get rid of, because chasing sheep leads to catching sheep, leads to chewing on sheep, leads to a predator in the flock, which is really not what you want. You want a protector, not a predator. So yeah, it's a tricky little situation though, but yeah, I think that's about it in a nutshell.
Do any of you have experience with other guardian animals? I'm thinking of llamas.
Llamas or donkeys? Have you heard about any stories with guard llamas or guard donkeys?
No, I mean, I've heard about it. I actually, there's a farm right next to like where I'm from, and they have emus in there emus. with their goats.
Wow.
Yeah.
That'd be wild. Emus can be mean.
Yeah.
Man, they're such cool birds. That'd be wild. Yeah.
I don't know how they do, but yeah. I know they're in there, and they've been in there a long time, like at least 10 years.
Yeah, that's wild. The Greg will always say that, like, when he started out with sheep, he was looking into getting, because the advantage of having an emu, I don't really know what the emu is, to be honest, but having a donkey or a llama is that they're grazers, so you don't need to be supplementing them extra feed. Like, they're just out there with the sheep, eating what the sheep are eating. I don't know if an emu is a grazer, if it needs grain. I have no idea.
Yeah, I was talking to my dad about it. Yeah. Like, what does it even eat? Yeah. I don't even know.
I bet it grazes.
Bugs, probably.
Bugs, and it's like a giant chicken.
Like, yeah, it's a really big chicken.
Yeah. all of our Australian friends out there, let us know what guard, if you guys got guard emus running around. That's hysterical. But man, I'm curious now. But anyway, Greg like was thinking when he started sheep, I'm gonna get a guard donkey or a guard llama because it's just gonna save me on dog feed, because dog feed's the most expensive input for the sheep by far.
Yeah.
And it's not for the sheep, it's for the protection of the sheep. But then he he asked to a lot of people who have been raising sheep for a long time, and he was just getting repeatedly stories of people having a guard donkey or something out there and a pack of neighborhood dogs coming in, like 6 or 7 just sort of like semi-feral dogs, and it was just too much for the donkey to handle. And at the end of the day, that donkey's it's a prey animal, not a predator. And so when push comes to shove, the instinct usually is to run as opposed to protect. And I get that, like, you know, donkeys can be super protective in, you know, of whatever, and they can be really nasty and they'll bite back and that kind of a deal. But when faced with like an oh shit situation, like those donkeys, I mean, in multiple cases, just like ran for a barn or just ran out of the paddock, and then the dogs just wreaked havoc on the sheep and killed a bunch of them. And so like with the guard dogs, the advantage is they're a predator, like deep back in their canine psyche. They don't have that run instinct. When push comes to shove, they're gonna fight, and so at least you're not gonna have something that's gonna abandon your sheep. Even if they get outnumbered, like they're aggressive enough as far as like barking, and they put up that big front where a big pack of dogs, it's sort of like speaking their language, you know, like those predators, they get it. And so they're like, I don't want to mess with that other predator versus, oh, like there's a donkey in there. Maybe I can get in there. You know what I mean? Yeah. But that's just for this situation, because there's so many coyotes around here, and there's a bunch of, I mean, it's people drop off dogs all the time on the roads out here, which is kind of sad, but like there's some dogs that people own that are just running around, and you just don't want to take that chance. Greg has had zero predator problems since he started with the guard dogs. Zero, not a single instance where a sheep has been eaten by a coyote or anything else. So the dogs, as much as they can be expensive and difficult to acquire, and require a little bit more attention, when you get a good one, it's just peace of mind is really what it is. So I'll put it this way: if I start a sheep flock, I'm going guard dogs. I'm not going guard donkeys or llamas. I will look into the emu thing because I think it's kind of cool. Yeah, exactly.
Because they could be a predator for sure.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. But like if I was a dog, I would be so freaked out.
What is that thing?
A gigantic 5.5 foot tall bird, like trying to hit me with a huge like big claws. Oh man, I don't know. I'm gonna look into it.
We got a comment. We started calving a week ago, and we had 6 today.
That's cool. That's we're gonna. I think our record last year was 7 in a day, and we're gonna. I think my prediction is we're gonna smash that this year, just because we're gonna have a more condensed calving window. Just from, this is the second year that Greg's removed the bulls in the wintertime, or not in the wintertime. Remove the bulls so we don't calve in the winter. And so last year was the first year we saw that impact, and we had a big spike of calving in the spring, and then it sort of tapered off throughout the summer, and then a smaller spike in the fall. And a lot of those animals bred back really quickly, meaning that they shifted farther up in their calving window. So we're gonna have even more spring calves this year, which means more days of more calves, which sounds super chaotic, but it's just so much better to get it done. I mean, we calve basically all summer long, but having it all condensed just makes it easier to manage. When you got everybody little at once, it's chaos, but then everybody grows up and can handle it. And so you're good to go on cattle drives and stuff after that point. So, yeah.
When you run a flood of sheep and cows together, can you have copper as a free choice mineral without hurting the sheep? Will they avoid the copper?
Yeah, so we give our sheep free choice copper. Because, which is weird, because people, like, for a long time the convention has been like copper will kill sheep, like it's toxic to sheep. But especially hair sheep varieties, there's growing body of research that they can actually tolerate a lot higher level of copper than people initially thought, and it's really good for parasites, like to help prevent like parasite loads. And so we give the sheep specifically a free choice copper, and they don't overeat on it because it's not mixed in with another mineral. So they'll select other stuff. They won't just overeat the copper because it's there, if that makes any sense. So if you're giving it free choice, in our experience, we found no issues with the sheep overeating on copper, and we're raising St. Croix sired hair sheep, so it's the rams that Greg started with initially were all St. Croix rams, and now he like the rams are sort of a mix, but there's a heavy St. Croix influence in those rams, and because that gives a lot of parasite resistance. But we've got some Katahdin, we've got some Florida native, we've got some like Barbados black belly sheep, like sort of all mixed in there. So at this point, it's this weird conglomeration of all those breeds sort of pulled together with a strong St. Croix influence, and so that's what we've got as far as our sheep breeds are concerned, and those, and at least in our experience, like that sort of hair sheep variety doesn't have issues with the copper. I can't speak for wool sheep because I know there's different requirements and stuff, but I wouldn't be as concerned about it as people sort of make you believe.
Without mineral for the sheep, did he have problems with selenium deficiencies, as most USA is severely deficient?
So, probably, like as in like they probably were deficient in selenium to a certain degree, but they were doing fine. Like I think the sheep were. That's like selenium is an important, as far as I understand in cattle, it's an important mineral for reproduction and for breeding back, and so that may have been a key as to why we've had a lot better success with our with our lambing since they were on the free choice, because of that addition of selenium. That might have been helping their fertility a little bit, but I think it's really just boils down to like what you can afford and what your goal is with the sheep. And the sheep were definitely a side enterprise and still are, and the cattle are the priority. And so in the beginning, like Greg's like, all right, I can only make sheep work if I'm working 40 hours a week in town. I can only make sheep work with my cattle if I move them only on the weekends and have minimum infrastructure, minimum inputs. And so that's what he did. Move the sheep only on the weekends. They basically just got salt and maybe a premixed mineral every once in a while. And he moved them, once a week basically, and grew them up from there. And now we move them in season. In the winter, it's slower, right? We're now kicking into high gear because the grass is starting to grow, and they get moved every other day, basically from now for the rest of the growing season. And they got their free choice, and he sort of built it up to that point. But they're hardy little buggers. If you get them started the correct way, with the correct stock and the correct management, where you're not babying them in the beginning, you can get some stock that just, I mean, cattle would starve to death on some of the stuff that the sheep are just thriving on. So it's pretty cool to see.
I'll try to make a long story short. Due to newbie ineptitude and a change in grazing land, I'll be overstocked. 17 cattle on 25 acres. To heal pasture, buy hay or sell cattle. Will I go broke? LOL.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. The first thing is it depends greatly. Like 17 cattle on 25 acres. I'm assuming that you're somewhere similar to this because like the degree to which you're overstocked with 17 on 25 depends massively on where you're located. So that's the first part. The second part I would say is you should always opt for like selling animals as opposed to buying more hay, because hay is like your biggest, in this system, is your biggest expense. So I think you'd be better off destocking down to a level that you can handle on the 25 acres where you're not overgrazing it, and just go from there. But it just depends on like what your goals are. Like there's no way with just cattle that you're going to be able to make a full-time living on 25 acres. There's not enough land to support the amount of cattle that you would need to generate that kind of income. If it's just sort of a hobby deal, and you want it to like break even, where maybe you make a little bit of money, but it's not like it's supplementing a full-time income, just destock down to the point where you're able to handle it. So let's just for example, if your stocking rate is 5 acres per animal unit and you've got 25 acres, you can run 5 animals. So you can run 5 1,000 pound cows, or it's 5 ewes per animal unit, so you could run 25 sheep. 25 U's or whatever. But again, it just depends on your goal, depends on where you're located, all that kind of good stuff.
He also said right after that, I didn't see it.
Rather
than use chemical fertilizers, I'd like to use cattle to heal old hay pasture by rolling out hay. Would this be cost effective?
Being overstocked. You're going to be feeding a ton of hay, and the cattle are not going to do very well in comparison to. So here's the problem, right? Like when the issue with haying, with like repairing a hay field, is you kind of have to treat it like something that's been severely overgrazed for a really long period of time, because haying is like even more abusive than overgrazing in a lot of aspects. So what that property needs is rest. It doesn't necessarily, like immediately, what it needs is rest. It doesn't necessarily need a ton of animals on it. It would definitely help, but you're only going to hurt it if you're significantly overstocked. So unless you can like pull off the cattle just being on full feed, full hay all the time with just a tiny bit of supplementation of grass, but that's just such a dangerous game, because what they're going to do, because the grass is so much more palatable than the hay, they're just going to hammer that tiny little bit of grass that you're giving them, and you're just not going to get that good recovery and the top third grazing that it really needs in order to come back properly. So I would say you need to, if you're not, especially if you're not going to use fertilizers, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend, but again, depends on your situation. I think you just need to destock and then go from there. If you're destocked and you're grazing it like normal, after you give it a sabbatical, I think that's going to probably be the best bang for your buck as far as repairing a hay field, because it just needs rest. Like the hay field's just been abused and abused and abused and taken from and taken from and taken from. So just give it a rest, let everything grow up, and then come in with some animals, knock a bunch of that thatch like down. You might have to supplement them in that first year with like a protein lick potentially, if it's just really lignified grass. But it just needs some rest to recover, and then just start grazing it normally. But it just depends on the situation. Like I said, I need more information to really give you a good diagnosis.
This comment: 2020 global pandemic and a plethora of puppies.
It's a great title. Guard cassowary. Oh, good idea, Finn. You know what a cassowary is? Uh-huh. Oh, it's a scary bird. But people who don't know what cassowaries are will know what I'm talking about. We can look it up after the fact.
Okay.
Yeah.
Our vet recommends we use a selenium booster at birth because our area is supposedly deficient in that mineral. Do you think Free Choice Minerals with selenium will eliminate the need for it?
I can't speak to that necessarily. I think it'll help probably. Like it'll help make sure that they're getting enough selenium. I don't know. I mean, like I'm not a vet, you know what I mean? So I only sort of know what we've learned here, and I would say if I was in your shoes, I'd do my research as far as like what the signs of selenium deficiency actually are, and I would go ahead with the Free Choice in the beginning. And if I'm starting to see those signs of selenium deficiency, even though it might be later on down the road, like it's not fixable immediately because I didn't give it to him at the right period of time, if that makes any sense, I would just know next time after they calve or lamb or whatever that I'm going to need to give the selenium booster. But I would try the Free Choice first and just see what happens, but do my research as far as like any indicators of selenium deficiency. So I think we're going to wrap it up soon. So last couple questions here.
That was the last one we had.
Alrighty. Anyone got a last burning comment? Something for Connor, something for me, something for Isaac who's not here. And then we'll wrap this dude up because it's been about an hour. Been a good session. What Free Choice mineral? Last question. Let's see. What Free Choice mineral do Greg's sheep consume the most? They consume a lot less mineral than the cattle do, which is kind of interesting. Like the rate that they consume it is significantly slower. It's sort of the same stuff. They consume selenium, phosphorus, sodium, which is not sodium chloride, just sodium, and this vitamin mix will get consumed pretty readily. I'd say probably selenium or phosphorus get consumed the most. When will we see me on Clubhouse? I'm trying to figure it out. Thanks for the invite to Clubhouse, but it's just a whole new world for me. It's just something I need to sit down and really drill down into. But yeah, you'll be hearing some announcements. For people who have no idea what Clubhouse is, I'll bring you up to speed in the future. So anyway, would you buy sedge would blue sedge be much better for row cropped areas? I don't know anything about blue sedge, to be honest. I will say that areas that you're turning from cropping to pasture, something that we heard from a guy who knows what he's talking about. I think he was former NRCS grazing specialist for Missouri. I think that's what he was. Anyway, I think Isaac would know better because he's the one who had the conversation with him, but he was telling me that this gentleman was saying sort of the best sequence to go through if you're thinking about, if you've got the capital to do this and you're thinking about turning something that's been row cropped into pasture, is to start by drilling annuals, not perennials, just like summer annuals, because that's sort of what happens in nature, where you get these fast growing annual plants that colonize bare soil essentially. And so you're sort of mimicking that role where you go in with those summer annuals first, drill those in, they grow really quickly, and they start to put down some root exudates and carbon and all sorts of goodness like back into the soil at a fast rate. And then after that you would go in, I'm not sure of the time frame, but after that you would go in and start to plant or see what comes up, but I would start to seed some fescue if you're in that kind of an environment, or some of your perennial cool season grasses after that, and then you just sort of let nature take its course. But that's sort of using annuals to carry it from this like cropped like bare soil situation into a pasture system is a good way to go, to not just get a patch of weeds immediately. But I don't know a ton about it. It's just something that we've talked about a little bit, but I'm sure we'll talk about it again on future live streams, and I think Isaac's got some thoughts about it as well. So
she said maybe not blue sedge, but the one with 37-foot roots.
Big blue stem. That's what you're talking about. I don't know if it has 37-foot roots, but I'm pretty sure that's what you're talking about. Big blue stem. That's a warm season grass. I don't know if I would necessarily start with that. I might start with you got to talk to your grazing specialist in your area to about converting it, because they're going to know a lot more than I will. But yeah, things to think about. Alrighty. Next time Connor cooks for the guys, did everyone survive? Cooks for the guys.
I think maybe the title for the next.
Oh yeah. That's funny.
I can make a mean frozen pizza.
Yeah, so, there you go. That was a good session. Always is. Glad to have Connor on board. Glad to get a little introduction going. I'm sure you're gonna have your own thoughts and opinions on a lot of the stuff that people are throwing out there. I'll be honest, that it happens fast. So yeah, super excited. Super excited to bring everybody on with the journey. Check out the YouTube content if you haven't already. All this stuff will be out on YouTube. I've been publishing it up on Saturdays in the morning in preparation for the next week's live stream. So that'll be up there. I've also got this will be available as a podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts at some point this week as well. And yeah, thanks everybody. Same time, same place next week. Isaac will be here. Good stuff. See ya.